So, Kingfisher's just passed its 23rd birthday. Imagine that, 23 years old. And that means that because vision has always been at the centre of the life of Kingfisher, that means that we've been having regular vision talks over the past 23 years. 2 vision talks a year for the best part of 23 years. That's a lot of vision. Do we need any more vision? Surely after 23 years, we get the message, we get the picture. Well, over that 23-year period, certain things have stayed the same and certain things have developed and certain things have moved on. What stayed the same is that we're still called to reach lost people and see them transformed into fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. We're still called to be church at the center of community, living and showing the kingdom to those who are far away from God. Now, over those 23 years, we've seen hundreds of people come to know Jesus, be baptized and grow in their faith. We've been led from one small group of people meeting in one small rented room to 2 churches here in Gloucester, a social enterprise, a network that's spreading in Africa and India. A lot has happened in 23 years. And through the highs and the lows of those 23 years, God has remained faithful. When we've mourned the loss of loved ones, reeled from the loss of those who've chosen to separate from us, God has remained faithful. And his guidance has been like it was for the Israelites as they escaped from Egypt and traveled through the desert. So Exodus 13, verses 21 and 22 says, "The Lord went ahead of them. He guided them during the day with a pillar of cloud, and he provided light at night with a pillar of fire. This allowed them to travel by day or by night. And the Lord did not remove the pillar of cloud or the pillar of fire from its place in front of the people." They had a constant visual reminder of God's guidance towards the promised land. The vision was very visual. And what I've been seeking to do over the past 23 years, in good times and in challenging times, is to describe the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. Those pillars lasted until the Israelites arrived at the promised land. Well, the need for vision remains until the mission is fulfilled. So, where are we now? Where are we headed? Well, as I was saying at the end of last year, we've not really seen the fruit of some of what God was calling us to last year, and so we're continuing to believe for that, to pray for that, and to take steps of faith towards that. Evangelism, developing a faith-filled mindset, and growth. And we're seeing encouraging signs in each of those areas, but we're not seeing the fullness that we believe God is promising. And in 2016, we're continuing to believe for more in those areas. So what I'm about to say does not cut across or cancel out any of that. If I could sum up that pillar of cloud by day and pillar of fire by night in one word right now, that word would be choice. We have a choice. We have a choice in terms of how we view this network, what we choose to do in the light of that. How do we view this network, this church, this social enterprise, this whatever part of the network you're looking at? And I think that God's shown me 2 phrases. Neither originate with me, but they clarify the choice that God is wanting to place before every single one of us. Now, the first phrase is, what is? So, just look around you. What do you see? Depending on where you're hearing this or viewing this, you'll see a small or not so small group of people. You'll see a building. Maybe that building's a rented building. Maybe it's a building that's more permanent. Look at the empty chairs around you. Do you see them? That is what is. Think about what was on your mind as you came to church this morning. Your thoughts might have been dominated by a particular issue, but more likely there were a whole number of things jostling for attention. This is what is. Take another look around you at the chairs that are broken and torn, at the ceiling tiles that are coming down, at the front door that was broken as you came in this morning. If you're at Treadworth, you'll recognise all of those things. At the paint that is peeling. And maybe as you look around, what you see is a building that you only have access to on a Sunday, and that for the rest of the week it's used for activities that in no way reflect the values of the kingdom of God, or the values that are on God's heart. Now, take a look inside. Take a look at your expectations, your faith level. This is what is. But what if? What if the pillar of cloud by day and fire by night began to move? You see, Numbers 9:17 says, whenever the cloud lifted over the sacred tent, the people of Israel would break camp and follow it. What if the status quo was about to change? What if God says the status quo is no longer good enough? What if God says, I want you to expect more, to believe bigger, to aim higher? What if God says, I'm calling you to trust more, to act in faith more? What if God says, the pillar is moving? Here's the thing. Are we going to choose what is or what if? What would it mean to choose what if? Well, it's going to mean setting out on a new adventure. Just like with those Israelites in the Old Testament, leaving the camp that we know, putting our trust and our faith in Jesus Christ, and being led to a place we have not been before. Treadworth, the launch of a regeneration project. Make this building fit for purpose. Not so that it's more comfortable for us, but so that it can be used to reach more people more effectively for Jesus Christ. This regeneration project is a 5-phase project that will transform this building. Now, the cost of all 5 phases is going to be an estimated £60,000. Each phase will be started once the money has been raised for that particular phase. So phase 1 will be the external part of the building. A new front door, repainting the outside of the building. Phase 2 is getting the soft playroom upstairs up and running again, fit for purpose as a multimedia meeting room. Phase 3 is to repaint the interior of the church. Phase 4 is to upgrade the heating throughout the building. And phase 5, the final phase, remodeling the main hall. Now, the regeneration project will be launched at the beginning of March. Where is the money coming from for this? From us. From us as we respond to God's what if challenge. From us as we step out in faith and invest, not just in renovating a building, but making it fit for the purpose of reaching lost people and seeing them transformed into fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ for a generation to come. You see, the regeneration project is about reaching a generation, not settling for what is on the basis that it's easier and it's cheaper and it's all we can expect, but responding to the pillar, moving on to the new place of blessing, that new land that God has got prepared for us. Now, to kick this project off, we've managed to get a grant to replace all the chairs in the Treadworth building with some lovely new padded chairs. 200 new padded, comfortable, fit-for-purpose chairs that will be arriving in March. £10,000 worth of chairs. Treat them well. So of that 60,000, we have already seen £10,000 come in. I know God is in this. For Kingsway, what does what if look like? Well, it means beginning to pray as a church towards our own building so that we can be a 7-day-a-week presence in Kingsway. That'll mean being able to offer services to the community, see real change in the community, be at the heart of community in ways that are not open to us right now. What that means is that we move things to a new level as a church. There's going to be a high priority on prayer meetings where we are praying specifically for these doors to open. There's going to be a focus this year on growing connect groups, providing places of discipleship and belonging. It's going to be a focus of no longer accepting the what is state of affairs. We serve an awesome, almighty King of Kings. We are following a God-given vision, and we believe we will be equipped to do that in miraculous, awesome ways. What is no longer good enough. We are becoming a what-if church. For the network internationally, what does this mean? Well, in the belief that prayer changes everything, we are holding our second International Day of Prayer on April the 10th, Sunday, April the 10th. We held our first Day of Prayer 3 years ago. A lot's changed since then. I firmly believe that that day was a catalyst for a lot of kingdom activity, and that this next International Day of Prayer will be an even more powerful time. Since that time, the network has grown, with over 6,000 people now calling Kingfisher their spiritual home. New churches are being started. New ministries are being birthed. New countries are in touch with us. In Africa, countries like the Cameroon. And also, we're just moving into looking at supporting work that's happening in the Philippines. And on April the 10th, we are joining together with thousands of others to pray for each other, to pray for each other's churches, to pray for each other's countries, to pray together for this world. May your kingdom come. That is truly a what-if moment. Meanwhile, it's good to know that the finances of this network are in good hands. And to tell us a bit more about that, here's the chair of our trustees, Neil Parkinson.
Thanks, James. Good morning, everybody. My name's Neil Parkinson, and I'm chair of the trustees for the Kingfisher charity. This morning, I want to cover three things with you. I want to explain how the Kingfisher charity operates and what the trustees do. I want to outline what we, that is Kingfisher as a whole, achieved in 2015. And finally, what, from the trustees' viewpoint, we see as the key for 2016 in light of the incredibly exciting and challenging vision that James has just laid before all of us today. So the first thing I'd like to do is talk about the charity and the trustees' role for those who don't know what we do. Kingfisher Network of Churches is a registered charity. So the charity encompasses the churches at Kingsway and at Tredworth, all the network operations, and the overseas churches in Africa and India. A requirement of us being granted charitable status is that we have a trustee board set up who are responsible for the running of the organisation in accordance with the Charities Commission, in line with their rules and regulations. Now, the church leadership, that's James, the pastors and the elders, they provide the spiritual vision and direction and the spiritual coverage for our network of churches. They provide us with a sense of where God is calling us to action as he builds and grows his church. The role of the trustees, on behalf of all of you, the congregations and the people who call Kingfisher their home, is to build an administrative structure to support the mission and vision of the network. We must also ensure that we remain a financially sound organisation. So that means putting in place the processes to manage the money, talent, and all of the other resources that God has blessed us with, and doing this in a godly way by stewarding prayerfully with wisdom and fair-mindedness. At the same time, the structure needs to meet the legal requirements of a registered charity. So we must ensure that our activities are in line with what we've declared as the aims of the charity. We have to account for all the income and all the expenditure. We need to make sure we pay all the tax and NI to the government. We have to have the right insurances and licenses to cover all that we do. And finally, we have to have policies and procedures in place to ensure that our staff, our volunteers, and our congregations stay safe. If the trustees get all of that right, then nothing happens to us. If we get some bits wrong, we're held accountable by the Charities Commission for making it right. If we get it badly wrong, then we're held legally responsible, and we could end up in jail. So clearly, we have a huge incentive to make sure we get things right. Over the last 4 years, the trustees have been clearly called to build an admin and financial structure that is not just sufficient to get us through today's circumstances, but something that's robust enough to work as we grow in God's blessing. It was on the back of this conviction that we developed the network model of Kingfisher, where the vision of local, national, and international ministries was captured in a diagram. We also developed a financial model that was designed around this network model for Kingfisher. This is a model where interdependent areas of local and international ministry are supported by a central and shared resource. In simple terms, the core principle is to ensure that we share God's financial blessing in an appropriate way, so that together, all parts of the network can flourish. The model is set up to administer this vision, and as I said earlier, stewarding wisely and fairly. Now, this time last year, I shared with you the trustees' plans for 2015. We announced the launch of the financial model on January the 1st as a step of faith. It required faith because the truth was we weren't in a perfect place to launch it. But launch it we did. And I'm really pleased to say that the financial model has worked really well for us. Through it, we have been able to manage the reintroduction of forecasts and budgets so that we now have funded ministries. We've managed to pay Pastor Ollie, and we've also managed to provide a pay rise for the staff in 2016, their first pay award for over 9 years. The model has been pivotal in the trustees being able to make informed decisions and yet still be bold in those decisions that require faith. So 2015 was, as James preached at our vision morning last year, a year when the tide turned. Now James has presented his incredibly exciting but challenging vision for 2016. So what do the trustees see as the key message to take from this? Personally, if this was an ordinary business and my business, every fibre in my body would be screaming, "No, no, we're finally feeling in control and making sense of things, and now you want us to push on again." But as I've said many times before, this is God's business that we're involved in, and God's economy doesn't operate in any way that any of us could ever explain. So, firstly, we affirm that we are up for this, because we know that Kingfisher has been refined by God's grace to be where he has planned us to be. So the trustees believe that God's called us to step up and go for it, in the absolute faith that we just need to pay attention and do the simple things that he has equipped us for, and then God will do the heavy lifting and the miracles. So what are the simple things that we need to pay attention to in light of this vision? This vision is about our choice to the question, what if? It's about faithfulness and heart, expressed in your giving back to God. If you consider Kingfisher to be your spiritual home, then we ask you to prayerfully consider your giving to the church. Now, all the decisions we made in 2015 and for the 2016 budgets and pay were based on the current level of income from tithing and giving that we already receive, and we assumed that that would be maintained and even slightly increased in 2016. So to be clear about this, there's no extra money in the current pot to pay for the bold plans for Tredworth regeneration and Kingsway building. The first challenge is that we do not simply reduce our tithing to put money into the building projects. Your decision to give regularly, whether a 10% tithe or otherwise, to support whichever church you call home, is one between you and God. But as James said in a sermon earlier on tithing, it's giving back to God as a step of faith. So the second challenge is how to respond to this call in light of the first challenge. This is about making an additional offering to move God's kingdom forward. In these times of continued financial hardship, I realise that this may well be a real stretch for many of us. It may even mean making a sacrifice in some of our spending plans. All I can say is that the equation is really simple. The more money provided from your giving over and above your tithe from both of our congregations, then the more money we will have to be able to fulfill the regeneration vision. You may think that your small additional amount will make no difference, but placed in God's hand by you in real faith and expectation, he can do immeasurably more than you could ever imagine. Test God in this. Take the faith step along with us. Let's see our current what if become our future what is. If you have any questions, then please feel free to talk to me or any of the trustees. We'll be more than happy to chat with you. Thank you.
You know, what if is never convenient. What is so much easier to handle. There were an estimated 2.5 million Israelites who had escaped Egypt. What the Bible says is that they camped. But this wasn't your average holiday campsite. This was a camp that was as big as a city. Can you imagine the disruption that occurred every time the pillar moved? 2.5 million people do not just pack up their tents and set off. This was major disruption. A whole nation on the move. What kept them moving was a refusal to settle for what is. A determination to pursue what if. The pillar is moving. What if we were to follow? What if we don't just settle for what is? The pillar is moving. Tredworth, Kingsway, treasure seekers, India, Africa, the Philippines. What if?